Let's talk about Skyvaulting.
Sure.
So, I believe Andy Weir was the first person I heard talk about. He wrote The Martian, in case you're wondering. Most sci-fi, like the best way to make a sci-fi story is to break one rule. And so, like, this is what Mass Effect does. Mass Effect says, what if we could have negative mass? Or increased mass, right? That's element 0, ESO, it's called the mass effect is affecting mass.
Right.
And so, we were talking, so it started off...
Well, it is worth that we're not doing that, technically.
No, we're not. Sorry, yeah. That's the smart way to do it. Like, Mass Effect does it the best way possible. Mass Effect actually broke the correct rule.
Specifically because we're not making a science fiction, though, which is the other thing that I wanted to start off with. Technically, so all of our technology in the show is, from a writing perspective, mechanically like magic, much more than it is like technology, which is we invent the rules, and the important thing is that we stick to them and make them make sense within their own context, but they don't always tie into real life.
We're making
mechanics.
Logical magic systems.
Yeah.
It's a specific talent. See, also, anybody who likes Brandon Sanderson's best talent is making logical magic systems.
We're just calling it ancient space Mayan technology instead?
Yeah. But so, originally, way back when, Space Thing, not Skyvault, Space Thing,
right,
was about a bunch of us being on a spaceship. Then Kyle had this problem. Well, we spent a long time dealing with the problem.
We actually started with this problem. It was I was basically, so this is right before we started doing YouTube full time.
Right.
I graduated college. We hadn't started doing YouTube. I was in this weird middle space of my life where nothing was happening, and I was depressed. And I learned about Star Citizen and was just daydreaming one day. I was like, it'd be super cool if like all my friends could just get a spaceship. We could just like go pilot like crew a spaceship together. But we didn't have a spaceship, so I decided instead to write a story in which we were all on a spaceship, because I had this whole idea for a while of like I wanted to like show my friends off doing maybe like a sitcom sort of thing, but all of them just seemed really unoriginal. And so I was like, I know, I'll do exactly that but on a spaceship. So it'll be like a comedy Firefly or something.
Yeah.
And that's where the idea came from in the first place. The main issue with this idea is that we actually still didn't have a spaceship. So
yes.
we couldn't film it on a spaceship very effectively.
One second, minor pause. Somebody mentioned the Laws of Magic blog post from Brandon Sanderson.
Yeah.
I think more and more, sometime during this month, I want to do a fantasy book podcast stream.
Yeah.
Because I have extreme opinions about that blog post. But it's probably not the time. So tune in later when we do our fantasy book, our fantasy literature podcast. We should, I don't know how we'll do it, but I think that'd be fun.
Yeah.
Because y'all all have great. Anyway, so we didn't have a spaceship.
Right.
And so Kyle eventually comes around to thinking, you know what fixes that problem? What if there wasn't a spaceship? It's worth pointing out, we actually had a script.
I did. I wrote 2 scripts, actually, of this
Two
original
scripts,
idea.
yeah. There would be like 20-minute episodes. JP's a cook.
Yeah, no, it was us. Like, and part of the reason we ended up not doing this is because we did the whole channel, and I actually felt like I showed you guys off pretty well. And so I just lost the motivation for doing that in that same story. But originally, it was all us with our names, and it was like Ethan was the cook, JP I think was the pilot.
Oh right, Ethan was the cook, JP was, I don't know. By the way, Johan Wehermaki.
Yeah.
That's correct.
What do you say?
This stream is for raising awareness of the Skyvault project. If you want to donate, do it to Kickstarter.
Yeah, that's what we're currently talking about. Is the Kickstarter thing that we're running right now. This is how it all started originally, and it was you hadn't been in anything actually at that point because we hadn't even started doing our weekly videos. Yeah, because we were talking about like eventually working you into this idea somehow, but you hadn't been.
We actually bought products for it. That's like where some of our gun props came from.
We used a couple of our guns because we all had guns originally. I actually learned how to spin a gun for it.
Yeah.
My character was similar to I think mine and Ian's characters. Like
mine was very undefined. Well, actually mine got more defined as we went on. Like because we were talking about this is where, at this point it was still Space Texas actually.
It was. That
Space Texas
the same. Well, because the whole thing was like we want to film this with what we have,
and so we have Texas.
We'll just bring in people we know. They'll have the same names, but we'll make up characters for them.
Right.
And we'll do it in places we have. They'll also have the same names, but we'll just make them planets instead of cities, and that's where that whole idea came from.
There was going to be like Space Baylor, because I was still at Baylor at the time.
Yeah.
It was like we're talking about the idea of the Baylor bubble, which is
oh right.
There's like
dome around Baylor.
There's about 4 blocks outside of Baylor where everything's pretty nice, and you don't get like typical Waco, which you have to be. Waco is not always the most pleasant city.
I actually think this has changed since we've been there.
It actually has. It's actually
it's
improved quite a lot. previously...
Mostly because of that one TV show, I think.
Right, well, yeah, Fixer
Oh,
Uppers
I
a lot.
don't know.
But
Yeah,
like,
and Baylor buying all the land around Baylor.
Right, so for a while, there were parts of Waco you just didn't really want to be in after dark, sort of.
Yeah, Reed's apartments didn't exist.
No, yeah.
Right.
When we were there.
Right.
But
yeah.
so we called it the Baylor Bubble. There was like 3 blocks right outside the edge of Baylor that we lived in.
Well, because you told me there was like you'd be like in what looks like a album cover back alley shoot, and you'd cross the street, and then there would be a building coated in gold.
Right, no,
literal
like,
gold.
there's actually literally a building in Baylor that has gilded.
Like it was that close. Like you just
Yeah.
cross the street and just suddenly Baylor. Like
I
Baylor
lived
Wake
on
is
the
so
raggedy edge of the Baylor Bubble. Like the back, like walking out my front door was fine, going out my back door was sketch. Like
Yeah.
literally. Anyways, we envisioned like Waco having having an actual physical bubble, like a force field. There's gonna be a whole thing.
I'm out of here.
I was just gonna pause the game real
Okay,
quick,
sure.
so it's more clear that we're not playing it.
There's gonna be a whole thing that we where we like I had to go steal a Baylor bow tie from people, which actually turned into one of our Skyvault episodes.
Yeah.
Somehow. Anyways,
yeah, it's interesting seeing what kind of carried over.
Yeah, that's weird.
Because my character really isn't the same character, but
no,
feels
yours was basically
similar role, sort of.
you were just basically just Space Kyle.
Actually, my character turned into my spy character, kind of. It was sort of
Yeah.
similar.
Okay, kind of.
My White Lightning HQ spy thing. Anyway, none of that is actually answering what we were talking about, but it was a precursor to it.
Anyways, Kyle says, "What if there wasn't a spaceship?" Which,
Yeah,
by the way,
like
the
2
spaceship
years
was going to
later,
be good.
Like it took a long time.
Like
I
there's
think
still
we were
concept.
trying to address the idea of budgeting.
Right.
Yeah, well,
Right.
we were talking about. What do you mean? Like in the original?
Like with the spaceship thing, like
Yeah.
we're like we'd have to buy an apartment that would be the spaceship,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
then
'cause-
you were like, what if we don't?
I kept thinking about all the things that I liked about
Yeah.
the idea, which is
Right.
I liked the Space Texas thing, I kind of liked the vague characters, I liked the idea of taking the same idea and making it not us and the characters that were coming from that, and at some point I was like, the only thing that's actually holding us up is the physical spaceship.
We
So
can't
what
find-
if I removed that and had to come up with a creative solution for how do we get to planet, kind of like how Doctor Who had to come up with the police box idea, because
Right.
they also couldn't afford a spaceship.
Yeah.
And so like this is I remember you first sending me this idea, and I had like a long response to you on Skype.
Oh
it was,
my God.
It summarized what I thought was the positive and negatives. And eventually, I came down on the side of thinking it's a good idea, but there were things we lost.
You
Like,
know what influenced my ideas a lot early on, actually,
Yeah.
was the Anthony and Ashley Birch. I was listening to their podcast at the time,
Yeah.
and they have lots of just I think interesting storytelling insights. And I was listening to their podcast at work when I thought
Yeah.
of this, and then I messaged you, and Ian worked up kind of this whole idea of my solution was, and I don't know why. But my solution, I was like, how can they just jump from one planet to another without having to deal with the travel aspect?
right.
And I, for some reason, thought of the Thor laser from the
Right.
Thor
Yeah.
movies.
Which is great. And then this is a big breakthrough. It was New Year's Day, what, 2015?
Was it 15?
Well, it became 2015 or maybe 2016.
It was the
15,
20
16.
Yeah, it was the 15-16 New Year.
Right, and so we sat down and we just like everybody else was out actually doing important things, not important things.
Well,
They
it was
were doing fun things.
celebrating New Year's.
I had been done by that point though. I was so. This is when Avery invited a bunch of people I didn't want over.
Yeah.
It was?
When No Heroes pointing out that we came up with basically the Doctor Who vortex manipulator, but
Right,
a
but-
space version instead of a time version.
You know,
Ours
how-
makes a little more sense.
a bunch of those people were the crew.
Yeah, well, that's true. Jeffrey was there. John,
John?
Jeffrey, John.
That was actually one of the most fun things I remember doing.
Right, and I just
Recently.
already done my things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Someone's saying the stream might be cutting out. I'm not sure
Oh.
if it's. I just want to make sure people are picking up what we're saying.
Oh, okay, it's good now?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
All right, cool.
Sorry. So we have.
Summary is spaceship. We couldn't afford a spaceship, so I needed to come up with an alternate solution to traveling between planets, kind of inspired by the Doctor Who, like simplifying creative solutions, and we ended up coming up with I came up with the Thor laser idea.
Right.
Oh
And
my
so
gosh.
Then, go
The
ahead.
potential spaceship idea was really stressful because it involved all of us moving into like a 2-bedroom apartment and having one bedroom be the set.
That was one idea we were talking
That was
around.
like,
It was just like
I
what if we
was like,
rented an apartment
what?
and turned it into a
Yeah,
spaceship?
that was a crazy idea. Anyway, go ahead.
And coating
Yeah.
the walls in tinfoil and.
Yeah, it was
yeah,
crazy.
basically.
We also thought like, what else is like a spaceship? A boat. Can't afford a boat.
Yeah.
What about a shipping container? Can't afford a shipping
Potential.
container.
Oh, yeah, shipping containers seem good, but yeah, no.
Anyway,
can't afford that. Anyway.
So so then Kyle came with the Thor laser idea, And so I'd been reading The Martian. I've been reading stuff by Andy Weir, some blog posts and things, and I was really into this idea because I realized that the thing that I love the most about Mass Effect, which I finished playing not too long before that, was the fact that it broke one rule and made everything work. And so I thought, so what now? If you're smart and you are super genius and you're super great, you can do that. We aren't. But so I said there's.
Just we weren't writing the same kind of story that Mass Effect and the
No,
Martian
it's also
were.
we weren't doing sci-fi.
In the real world,
right?
And they just were like one tweak. So Mass Effect is like, what if you can have negative mass? Everything runs off of that. Martian is like, what if there are sandstorms on Mars, and then everything else runs off of that.
Actually, so like my
ours is more the fantasy example, which you kind of like take the inverse. Almost.
I have a distinction I use in my head, and it's not anything that anybody else has to use. This is my own personal kind of like what works for me to categorize things, which is science fiction is taking one thing, changing it, and see what happens to a society. And fantasy is the opposite. Fantasy is changing a bunch of stuff, and then it's what you see that's similar that strikes your chord. Yeah. And they're not mutually exclusive at all. It's entirely possible to have a society where you change one thing, and then you look around and you see all the things that are still the same, and then that's like, so this is like Star Wars is fantasy, because it's like, what if everything was different, but we still have space Nazis, kind of?
Yeah.
Right, there's still a few,
right,
like,
and so
like touchstones to be able to
but it's not focusing on the change, right? So Mass Effect is very hard sci-fi in the sense that we change one thing.
That's kind of it's not like the focus of it. Is it focusing on the one change, or is it a weird world where it's focusing on the things that you're familiar with?
Right, and what does that say about those things?
So
right,
we're going more for the second one.
We're doing more fantasy. But so one way I developed kind of a corollary process, which is, what if instead of changing one thing, we base our entire world around one limitation?
Yeah.
Right.
And so, what if we have one advantage, that is, we can travel everywhere, and then we build a world based around the idea that changes a lot of things. And so, from there, we went to, what if there are 5 different clusters, and it takes forever to get in between the clusters, except we can get there fast.
Yeah.
And what does that change? What does that allow us to do? So it's kind of backwards world building.
Yeah. And at some point, we realized it was actually pretty similar. Like, structurally, it's basically like how... Like taking ships across oceans. Essentially, it's the same kind of setup, and it's just like, what if you suddenly gave an old adventure serial protagonist like a private sonic jet or something,
right?
That's right.
And could just instantly jump anywhere in the world. And then basically the entire world and story everything rotates around that one thing.
That's our nucleation site. That's where everything kind of stems from.
Themes came in that way, character motivations, like everything came in around that.
The conflict is based around that. And now you actually had a bunch of characters already slated for this. Like by this time you'd already come up with I'm going to say his name. I think it's
Sure.
His name is Shay.
Right,
not Spencer Shay, because that's
weird.
Actually Spencer Shay is iCarly's brother, which is too bad.
This guy's first name yet.
Shay Spencer would have been great.
So that's our world setup. So they're wanting to know what we were talking about, like how the technology works.
Here's some simple questions. The nerd asks, what are the rules for the Thor laser, though? If you use it on a ship or in a building, have you damaged the building?
Right.
What is the max amount of people and things it can carry?
So we've actually spent the last several years of writing this, 2 years of part of that has been asking ourselves those questions and coming up with answers, and it's a lot of it we really try to make it intuitive, I think, and consistent. So
we did it kind of the opposite of the way real technology you always want to be like it'd be great if this just worked, then programming says, ha, no.
Right. But we're the writers, and it's your job as a writer to give your characters a hard time, so we had to come up with all these things that let them not use it.
So does it damage the building? No.
That was actually one of my first things. I was originally thinking, like, okay, so how do we limit these people when we need to?
Right.
And I was like, okay, their one weakness, obviously, is a ceiling. You can't go through something that's in your way.
Yeah.
Except for, and it's we have a loose sort of like, there's a line somewhere where it's like atmosphere is thin enough to push aside, basically. Right. But once it like gets dense enough, you can't go through it anymore.
Incidentally, this is just to give you some information on Mass Effect real fast. They didn't mention, but the shields are talking about. Like when your character has shields.
Yeah.
They're kinetic barriers. This is actually taken from Dune, which has the same thing. The kinetic barriers stop anything moving fast, but don't stop things moving slow.
Oh, okay.
So like that's why melee attacks will hit and you can touch people, but a laser bolt stops.
Interesting.
So what about like space rocks?
Space rocks, the kinetic barriers are used to move aside space rocks.
So we have that.
Anyway, but
Well, yeah. So you have to, and well, so it's incredibly hard to navigate with them as part of it, and
Right.
and in part of the show is one of the characters learning how to actually like the group that they meet up with has already established a way to pick out coordinates to aim yourself properly at a
Right.
planet, and
Yeah.
the idea is if you get close enough to a large enough source of gravity that you kind of arc into it by default.
It kind of it skims power off that slingshots.
Yeah, and you have to set all these dials on the
But
gauntlet.
the idea is you have to have an open shot to there are time passages you have to deal with. Like you have to be able to. Let's say you're trying to get to Venus. Well, Venus doesn't exist in our world, but let's say you're
Right.
trying to get to Houston.
Yeah, there you go.
Trying to get to planet Houston, you have to get to a place where a passage to planet, it's kind of like modern day space launches. They have to be done at specific time windows.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, just like you have to scrub the launch if you miss it.
They explore this in The Martian, right?
Kinda, yeah.
To some extent.
Except that so the difference in real life is that you have to factor time into it, and we don't.
Right.
Sort of. So it's less like
It's
the
not how
Martian, or like actually traveling to Mars in real life. You have to launch at a certain time, so that when you get there, it has also moved into position.
Right.
Yes.
Ours is like that, but immediate.
Ours is more just
Yeah.
like there it is, but
Right.
you have to wait. If it's
Yeah.
nighttime, then it's on the other side of the planet.
Because if
so.
Dallas is in between you and Houston, then you have a problem.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like in Hercules when you have to wait for the planets to
Kinda,
literally
yeah.
align.
Like
It's
actually,
less
this-
scientific than that.
what's the term? Conjunction. Like the conjunction of Venus was a big deal. I talked about that a while ago. But yeah, it's not exactly. It's kind of loose, but there's time windows involved.
So this is interesting too. We have another person asking, how do you vault to the other side of a planet? We actually have this in an episode where they have to work out how to get like around a planet by doing like a multi thing.
Yeah. It's
like a multi-jump sort of
but
situation.
it's very difficult
Right.
and not typically possible.
Because we're keeping that in mind. Like that's the thing is when we invent these rules, we have to then make like the story around them. And so we like there's also like you can't jump onto a spaceship because how would that work?
Right.
That, like with the thing that we're describing,
Well, you
that
can
doesn't
jump
make any
onto a
sense.
spaceship. You can't jump into a
Right,
spaceship.
and then you die presumably because
Yeah, it's what is the speed of sky vaulting? Fast.
we don't actually know that, and I don't know if so. There are a few things that we probably just won't define because I don't think they're unless they are important. We probably will just leave them undefined.
Right.
The exact speed isn't super important. I
No,
don't
it's
think.
not.
The vague idea in my head of how this works is like the idea of like folding space.
Yeah,
Kind
no,
of
it's
when
good.
people talk about like doing a faster than light travel where you like fold the space rather than yourself.
Yeah.
Rather than moving yourself. You move the
Way
space
back
around
when
you.
when I was trying to sell the name Bolt as the name of the series, I came up with the acronym Boson Orientable Light Speed Transfer as an acronym because bosons are things you can stack into themselves. And I actually had a whole really bad quantum physics argument for how this is supposed to work.
Yeah.
But oh well. Do we chunk of atmosphere with you? No.
No, and actually, so a lot of this will go into like how the effect looks, and I'm kind of
Yeah.
like working that out in my head. You can actually see it a little bit in the trailer.
Yeah.
When I like kind of warp away, it leaves like a silhouette behind of me just briefly. Because kind of the way that we have, so this is again one that gets into too fine a detail. We just don't touch it because we're not actually like looking to define everything scientifically. It's more just establishing the rules and following them. But essentially, the gauntlets that they wear that let them do this can extend to a certain like amount that they bring with them. So
Right, no, it's
like
like-
up to a maximum amount.
It's actually like the feathering tool on Photoshop.
Yeah, kind of.
It's like how many pixels out do you
That's
want?
our rough idea. Kind of in the Doctor Who kind of way. It's like imagine that. It's nothing like that, but close enough.
Right.
Like it's you. The idea is it doesn't drag anything with you except for what you've set. So
Basically,
it
it
is set
takes your
to-
clothes.
It is set to bring a person.
Okay.
It's
and
got
then do
a-
other things with
It's
it.
here's my thought.
It actually, it could. It theoretically could like bring a little bit of the atmosphere with it.
It could.
It really just comes into how
I
the
mean,
effect
it
looks.
So
would
part of
have
these,
to.
if you're talking about like potentially
Yeah.
massive pressure changes, the thing is, it's nothing where we are dealing with is different than Texas.
Right, we are talking about. So yeah, that's the thing. We are warping onto a lot of planets that are very similar to each other, so it wouldn't really have a whole lot of effect either way.
Now, maybe if we wanted to warp onto Venus, things would go bad. But
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
and okay, so the question is it faster or slower than light speed? It's probably slower than light speed, but the only thing we have to find about the speed is so here's we have 3 levels of transportation technology in Skyvault. We have mass consumer transport, which is think about like going between Europe and America on the
wooden
Mayflower.
ship, yeah.
Like it takes a few months, and we say cryosleep. So it's like
Yeah.
it's expensive and unwieldy and really inconvenient and just a major hassle. Then the powers that be have big giant solar sail ships.
Right. Of which there are like maybe 10 at most, or
I was
something.
thinking like 5.
Yeah, if that much.
Because they're the only ones with enough money to actually build these things, and they're so massive they have to be built in space.
Right. It's like a city-sized ship or something.
Yeah, it's like an Alliance ship from Firefly.
And most of it is engine, basically.
Right. I'm kind of thinking it's actually a lot like the Pillar of Autumn.
Yeah.
Except with giant sails, like solar sails.
And those will get you there in like 3 days, I think is what
3
we
days,
said,
yeah.
which is like unheard of, super fast. But it's almost nobody gets to use those things. It's only for like highest priority.
Or people with enough money, like with the corporations that have enough money.
Stream may have cut out. Window Hero said it did, but it might be soon. I'm not sure. And then, in case it didn't cut out, there's and then there's us, which is like a matter of like seconds. Like it's less than a minute is what I was. Thinking.
It really the only thing is it's like less than an hour. That's really all the only thing. It's like an elevator.
It really doesn't define it all that much, I guess. Like effects-wise, I had it planned to follow us through one jump at least once. It's I don't know. It is pretty near instantaneous. I think it's probably faster than light speed, honestly. Like the way that we're picturing the effect happening.
The point is, it doesn't matter.
It's right. No, it doesn't really matter.
It is
but
functionally
if I had
instant.
Yes, it is like folding space around you. It does seem to be jumping through, like ignoring conventional space to some degree.
Yeah. So I think like functionally instant is fair.
Yeah. And in my head, the effect is almost like it's basically like it's like you fall through a hole, sort of.
Yeah.
Like everything just sort of like falls around you, and you it's again like from the perspective of the person jumping, it's almost like everything just kind of compresses, and you just sort of like fall from one place to the other, and then land there. And then from the outside, it just looks like this streak of light shooting across space, which was also super fun because. It means the least conspicuous way to travel in this universe is the giant laser beam.
I was gonna say, just based entirely on a desire to antagonize y'all, that from the perspective of the person inside the bolt, everything would look purple because that's neither red shifted nor blue shifted.
I kind of like that actually.
Just to annoy people. Actually, so Mass Effect is really good about this. In the loading screens during a Mass Effect jump, like half the screen's red and half the screen's blue.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
What color is the Doctor Who intro?
Usually kind of purplish.
It switches between. So Doctor Who is orange and blue usually, and it depends on. Actually, they switch it depending on if he's going forward or backward, and I never noticed.
What?
Really? Yeah, I think the one. I don't know if that's consistent, but some people who pay attention, I think, make it work that way. I don't remember which color is which, but that's supposedly how it's supposed to go.
Yeah.
I think green would be fun.
As Artie was saying, that's kind of how wormholes work. Yeah, so it's probably a similar concept to that. It's just like a personalized wormhole. What else? Feel free to keep asking questions also in case we're forgetting anything.
That's most of what I mean. Like that's most of
the gist of it. Yeah, it's.
I'm really happy with how that worked out because
I am too. Actually, I think we've done a pretty good job.
It was super elegant. I thought it's not as elegant as what if you could put a negative sign into equation.
Yeah.
Like Mass Effect, but.
I don't know, it's still pretty elegant. It's like the idea is there's a piece of technology that allows you to throw yourself at a planet basically instantly, and the limitations of that are make sure you can see the planet, and make sure there are things in the way. I mean, it's really easy for people to get, even if they're not familiar with like advanced scientific theories. Like it's
pretty elegant,
straightforward. Yeah. They're asking what is the thing they use to vault. So the thing they mostly use is a device that they wear on their arm, kind of like a weird techie gauntlet. The organization that they stumble across has constructed them out of found technology.
They've reverse engineered just a little bit.
Yeah. So they're kind of rough. Like they're not quite as up to the standard of the like ancient technology that they found, but they managed to like get it to work just enough. And so they all have one of these things on their arms that lets them fly around.
I always think of it as the Cowboys and Alien Gauntlet.
Don't miss. Yes, that is actually very. Xylus just put "don't miss" in quotes.
Yeah, I think we have an episode about that.
That's pretty much the tactic. Yeah, and so they have it's literally just like star charts and stuff. We were going to design the gauntlets to almost look like an astrolabe because the whole thing, like flavor wise, we're still making this kind of feel like a 1920s adventure serial sort of.
A little bit, yeah.
But space related, so it works with us with what we've planned out pretty well because we have this whole like
that far away.
She's just that loud.
I told them I would bring Lola out and
oh really?
Go get Lola.
Sure. Yeah. Come here. Come say hi to chat.
Meow.
Explain to them how space works.
Just squeeze her a bunch. I mean, if you miss, you'll end up somewhere. True.
Yeah, that's also discussed sometimes.
Well,
like,
it just ran away, so...
If you miss, you just fly into space and nobody knows what happens to you and you're gone forever.
Most serious question. Favorite Mass Effect character go, Liara?
I haven't played enough yet, but the jellyfish.
Hanar. They're called Hanar.
Actually, no, sorry, the emotionless ones are pretty great. I'm not sure. I have to decide between them. Could you accidentally vault onto a sun?
Not
yes,
accidentally?
Well, not accidentally so much. It is advised against. So like again, it's like, and I think it's a density thing. Like once you pass sort of like a certain density, you can't like the thing can't like push through it anymore and disengages. Right. So at some point, you would get deep enough into a sun that you would just end up in the sun and die.
What's the gauntlet named? I keep calling them jumpers. Kyle keeps staunchly calling them gauntlets. But the way I usually... So, I have two different ways I name things for Door Monster. One is I tell Kyle a name and he goes, that's perfect. And the other one is I just keep saying it until everybody else starts saying it. So I think we're probably going to keep calling them gauntlets because jumper hasn't caught on.
Astrolabe?
I know it's already an object.
Also, we actually just don't refer to them much. Mostly it's just kind of like... we just kind of Superman pose.
Yeah, we don't like... I don't think they would have a reason to have named them so much. Because if you can say...
I'm sure they have their own name.
Gaunt Jumpies.
Gaunt Jumpies.
That sounds like some Anti-Donna stuff.
Oh my god, it does.
Oh, did we miss the Anti-Donna tour?
Yeah.
No! Oh no! Gauntlets?
Just calling them an Astrolabe wouldn't be too bad either.
I think maybe Astrolabe should be the official name and we can have our own... We can maybe mess around with not saying that.
Someone do a suicidal vault into something dense as a desperate sort of weapon. I think they would just die. And also waste a very expensive object.
Yeah, because I mean, you land on planets, so I mean, technically, anytime you use it correctly, you hit something.
Yeah.
It doesn't actually. What we decided it accelerates you a certain amount, but not much. Like you definitely keep position when you use it. Like if you stand on your head and fire it off, you will land on your head.
Oh right, yeah, that's what we were talking about. Yeah.
So you flip around somewhere in the middle.
We could.
If someone else started hitting buttons on your gauntlet, could they Skyvault you? Potentially, but it's a multi-step process.
Right, actually, I had that same thought, like, from an engineering perspective, and I actually added, like, a multiple, like, there's a priming, my idea was, like, you have to set the settings on a dial, then you have to prime it, then you have to fire it.
Yeah.
So it's a multi-step sort of thing. Somebody presumably could, but I wanted to make it easier than just, like, I didn't want somebody to be able to bump into you and set it off, because that seemed like a bad design.
What about Veloculus?
Veloculus? Like, Velocid?
Like a little velocity.
Veloculus? Like a
speedlet? Like a little speed, a speedlet.
Speedette?
Speedlet. What about...
It's not Ant-Man buttons, sure.
I had another thought also. I forget what it was. Oh yeah, I think this is fair enough. We can talk about this because it's anything that's in the first episode. Basically, I think it's okay to go into some detail on. The way that they are also holding our character, the main characters, hostage to do whatever they want is there's a way to override the gauntlets in such a way that they blow up. Basically, that's pretty much it. Like the idea is we haven't really come up with an idea for that, but it's not like it has a kill switch so much as just that they can send commands to these things. So actually, that's kind of important. They're all on like a network, right? The shadowy organization is controlling them and has access to all them. Rampart, yeah, and can basically see the status of any of the different gauntlets.
Right. So we tried to label it because we talked about using the gauntlets to find other people or using the gauntlets to communicate with each other. Wow, those weren't words. Using the gauntlet to find other people or communicate with each other, like basically like GPS and cell phone.
Right.
But that just ruined too many of our plots.
Right. Plus, it didn't make it was really easy to fix it and make it make more sense because like long range communication could almost be like. I mean, honestly, it's almost like having cell phones in an adventure serial. It also messes it up. Mm-hmm. So we didn't, and instead made it to where
the only thing that can happen is that that Rampart knows whether or not a gauntlet is activated or not, and they found a way to send a signal to them. Basically, they whatever signal they're using to trace them, they can amp that signal up to dangerous levels, and it will explode the gauntlet.
Right.
Which works out like Suicide Squad, where they all have explosive collars.
Right. Yeah.
Why can't they just remove the gauntlets? Because they're designed to be unremovable.
They are specifically locked on and have to be like unlocked by.
The idea is that
we need to make some reference at some point during it about like how annoying it is to not be able to take these things off just like around our clothing or anything.
Actually, so I kind of thought they were probably like loose enough that you could tug a sleeve through them.
Yeah.
Like the idea is that they so Rampart, they're very, very expensive, and because they let you go anywhere, Rampart wants to put whatever kind of security they can on them, which includes not being able to take them off without an unlock signal.
Right. Because they don't want to lose them, because there's a very few of them. Also, if they get out, that's bad. Like if somebody else got a hold of them, that would be really bad.
Do they explode, or? I think they should be connected to your arteries or something.
What if they cut off their arms is a good question. There isn't so much of a thing around that, other than I believe you just described the deterrent.
Right. Yeah. Actually, that's a problem. Also, it's kind of a weird subset of if we go into this in the first episode. People really like having their limbs intact in this universe.
Oh right, yeah, but that's actually a cultural thing. Weirdly, it's because
people really like having their limbs intact.
We can talk about that. That's also Skyvault technology, right. and also a technology that we keep failing to bring up in most parts.
It's actually true. So there's mechanical. We have Deus Ex style arms.
Mechanical limbs are actually kind of a big deal in this world.
Right.
Because
we have
it's
Deus Ex style augmentations.
Imagine so like as far as like the way they play into the culture, it's very similar to like peg legs. Was our idea? It's if you see somebody with a robot arm, they are probably not a reputable fellow. It was kind of the idea we came up with. The thing exists, but it's not like that person probably fought in the war or something. It's like
they're an outlaw.
Right. You have them if you are an outlaw person, essentially.
It's kind of like it's unregulated technology. It's technology. It's uncivilized.
I love how close some of these questions are getting to things I cannot answer.
Yeah, I know. Actually,
like,
they have
what
a
if
lot
you have
of
two
probing
robot
questions.
arms? That's a fantastic question that I cannot even begin to get into for a lot of reasons.
I could say, can you guys have a person with an amputated hand, like a detachable prosthetic? You probably could, but Rampart is very small. Rampart is like
a dozen people, maybe
10 people, and they're very selective
maybe
who
20,
they get. Like it just doesn't. We haven't hit demographic representation enough for that to be a problem.
There's how about 3?
Well, but yeah. So basically, it's specifically people for reasons that actually make in-world sense. Come to think of it, there's an ingrained hatred of mechanical adaptation.
Oh yeah, okay. Yeah, I guess I guess
I know, it's weird. Story development. Hey,
I'll also make sure we're on the same page about that later. But I think I know what you're talking about.
There's actually an in-universe reason why there's just a vague sense of real unease. Like actually, people like if this isn't Space Texas. This is our own setting.
Yeah,
it's kind of a problem. But like, if you lost an arm, it would probably be more acceptable, like just generally culturally done to not change it as opposed to even put in like a mechanicalized prosthetic.
Honestly, it's kind of like how like you could be in a suit, like in the real world, right? You can be a respectable business person. If you get injured in the eye and you put on an eye patch, everyone is going to make fun of you for looking like a pirate.
Right.
Like
it's
you can't get away from it.
Put on a glass eye. Maybe it's better. Maybe it'd be better in the world to have like a mannequin arm as opposed to a robotic arm. I think that might be the analogy you're going for. Whereas a lack of limb will always be somewhat disconcerting. Although I watched a documentary recently with a small boy missing 3 of his limbs, and he said people treated him more normally when he didn't have any prosthetics on at all. So
interesting.
Yeah.
But it's all it'll make more sense with some backstory that we can't get into right now.
Somebody also at one point asked, like, so in the teaser when Jay jumped off the cliff and transported, that mean he ended up on his back? Yes, we actually have that as a joke in one episode.
Yeah. What's the maximum pair-to-person ratio involved? We're talking about transporting pairs this whole time. If you're holding a pair, I imagine it would come with you. Actually, because Truman's often holding a book, so.
Right. Yeah. It's honestly that's probably one of those things that's like undefined to a degree. So the idea is
got some smart sensing.
You can't bring another person with you. That's the important part. It's like it's not enough. Like the things that we're wearing, you can bring one person and maybe something you're holding, but you can't drag another person along with you.
Yeah. It's less than a person. I would say. Probably less than a puppy.
I don't know. I don't think it will come up, but I don't know.
I think I like the idea that it compresses things that you bring with you. So, like, if you were to bring a bushel of pears, you're gonna end up with pear sauce on the other side.
Well, then definitely don't bring a baby.
That's what I'm saying.
So why exactly the cliff jumping though? Is there a reason? Yes, he had no better option.
Well, okay. So in the teaser, it was for the pretty scenes. But also it's just kind of his character. So actually, rough characterization of these people. Jay his entire character is
go.
So imagine you had an option where you could like carefully make your way down a hill, or there was something you could jump onto and slide down rather recklessly and get there faster, but definitely hurt yourself in the process. He will always pick that one. That is that character.
So there's one of my favorite things.
He's the character that seeks flavor.
He picks the fun one.
I think there's a James Bond game. I think it was Nightfire. It may have been another one with third person. Anyway, in this game you got special points for doing Bond moments, which is like you could run across the bridge, or you could shoot the crane, have the crane fall down, kill all the bad guys, and swing across.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So Jay always goes Bond moments.
Always Bond moments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Someone's asking when we're going to start, or about the script writing. The script writing we've been doing very methodically, so we've started writing the scripts already. We very much started from the ground up on them. And we have
all 12 episodes well outlined.
Right, like very, very specifically outlined. We're currently in what we're calling treatments, which is basically the script minus
dialogue mostly.
Which is everything we need to know for the purpose of production. And we are about halfway through with those.
Yeah.
So I would say we're over halfway done with writing all 12 episodes total. If I had
easily,
to,
and we know the whole story. We know we know it front to back.
Yeah.
It's just about we're basically like how Netflix loads. It's all blocky right now. And we're just refining the resolution.
Yeah, there you go.
Basically.
Yeah, that's a good metaphor actually.
Yeah. Captain Jack Sparrow, kinda, except
no. Actually, I keep forgetting that as one of when I list off our influences. Pirates of the Caribbean is a great one.
Right.
Like as far as tone goes, like it is very similar actually tonally to Pirates of the Caribbean. I would say that sort of like high paced adventure that's also just kind of like fun and fight scene wise. I will be giving Edwin that movie as a reference for how to choreograph our fight scenes.
Which is great. Just the first one.
Just the first. But the fight scenes in the first Pirates of the Caribbean are so good. They're so story driven and like nothing. It's not repetitive for more than like 10 seconds at most, and you can still see characters like making decisions and like characterizing themselves.
It's not good. It's not quite as like smooth and slick as like all the like Baby Driver stuff. Like
no, but for the purpose of that, Baby Driver was almost too slick.
No,
like, Pirates of the Caribbean has character.
Or like
in
Kingsman.
Fights.
It's not Kingsman. I think Pirates of the Caribbean is perfect.
Right. No, it's more about the storytelling that comes across in the action than
it's visually clear, and it's what species are the people in Skyvault? Texan.
Right. Yeah, we've gotten this question a few times. It is all humans. There aren't alien species in Skyvault.
No aliens.
It's all just people. But there's lots of different individual cultures of people.
Yeah. Again, with some questions I don't really want to answer.
We are occasionally, if we don't answer your question, it might be because we can't really without giving away.
So don't think we're ignoring you. You probably just have too good of a question.
You might actually just be like hitting on something that's
a
like
major
really,
plot
really
point.
early.
Yeah.
There's actually one of my favorite things was Brandon Sanderson adapted this after Robert Jordan, but Robert Jordan had a response. We always RAFO, read and find out.
Quakers is asking why the decision for no aliens? Money.
Also because we just wanted to be about Texas.
That too, but also aliens are hard.
Yeah.
Money probably, yes.
It's definitely, but we also just have more than on our plates than we need to right now. Yeah. Like
we did actually do I feel like we did a really good job outlining the cultures, though.
We did.
There are cultural differences between each of the 5 systems and between each of the classes within those systems.
Yeah.
That we've laid out really well. That are also even aesthetically different,
right?
And that all tie back into Texas historical aesthetics.
We basically have like 15 different cultures to deal with.
It's just as a taste, like the class system is very like the working class mostly looks like cowboy, like ranch hand sort of thing. The middle class mostly looks like hipster, like Austin, and then like the wealthy people are mostly like German inspired, because there's actually Texas has a lot of German history because German immigrants populated most of Texas back when all of that was happening. My ancestors were all German immigrants.
Half of mine.
And so like expensive German stuff sort of defines the upper class.
Somehow they still
you're meaning like modern German today, right?
Right. Yeah.
Not Lederhosen. Although, like that's like we have a bunch of Oktoberfests. We have places called Pflugerville.
Like the suits and the cars and the like everything that is fancy will be kind of like German inspired is the idea.
Like the series Altersgeld. Don't watch. Do watch.
Well, with technology, it's modern.
Do IKEA still exist in Skyvault?
That's Swedish.
I think probably not, but we will be trying to show off a lot of the Texas stuff in Skyvault.
Right.
Like there's a prominent Texas installation called Buc-ee's that nobody outside of Texas has any reason to know about.
Right.
But anything anything big like that, we're just including as like conglomerates of the big corporate entity that controls the space flight.
Right. Also, H-E-B.
Yeah, H-E-B, our grocery store chain, will be part of it.
It's kind of weird because H-E-B we just take for granted as just, like, some other people complain about their grocery stores. Have you ever heard anybody complain about an H-E-B?
No, I haven't actually. Actually, I've only heard praise for H-E-B, which is weird. Nobody goes out of their way to praise a grocery store.
If you were to stand in front of a person and vault behind them, what happens? It doesn't, because it goes up.
Yeah, it's kind of... So we actually specifically talked about this. This might actually change a couple of, like, Season 3 ideas that I have.
Yeah.
Because we readjusted it. Originally, we were actually talking about, like, you just point your arm in the direction you want. Mm-hmm. But we just realized, like, how difficult that kind of is to make the leap for.
So really, it's you have to point close.
What we decided is that you actually set coordinates on the thing,
right.
And then you point your hand up,
and they have to be compatible.
Sure you're cleared, but then it sends you in that direction. So it's presumably if you aimed at someone in front, like it wouldn't really work the same way.
No, because unless you set your coordinates for that person, which doesn't work.
Which might end up being helpful later on, just because it gives more to try to override if we do want to make any adjustments to it. But.
Yeah. Did you even start playing? We did start playing.
Yeah,
we're about to leave the Citadel.
We've been playing for about 5.5 hours. Actually, we'll probably after we're done answering questions, we will probably take a break. When we come back, we'll do the giveaway and we'll play some more.
Yeah.
So I think maybe at this point, like, it's probably time to just we've been answering questions. So there's a few more questions.
I'm fine still talking about it some more. We haven't really done it much, and we've made it halfway through our fundraising campaign, and it seems totally fair to answer some more.
Isn't this the most world information you've given out?
This is,
so
yeah.
far?
Actually,
it's
also
the most detailed.
It's really hard because this is the part I love the most.
I know. This is the part that I think is like the best. Like that we'll sell people on it, but you know,
it's like in terms
it's
of
hard to give it.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's hard to know what to.
We have $88,088.
Oh
man!
Palindrome. Oh, Air Training just said that.
Yeah.
Hey.
We have I'm really excited. I love the story we're telling, but I like the world building just even a little bit more.
Really?
Yeah.
I think because the world building enables the story.
It's always good to have obviously a good story is like the most important thing, which is actually important to note. Like whenever there is a conflict of interest between the two, story takes precedence. So even if it doesn't totally make
we're using
the
sense, sort of the J.K. Rowling method. Like Harry Potter is great because it has a great world that doesn't need to exist beyond the story. Mm-hmm. Like the game of Quidditch doesn't make any sense unless you need it for the story. We're a little bit more consistent than that.
Yeah. I mean, world building is really fun, but it's one of those things where, like, I've heard stories before of people going in to pitch ideas for movies and stuff, and they lay out this whole beautiful, like, very well done world building thing, and then the people questioning them, if they know what they're doing, will be like, okay, that's cool, but what's the story? Because that's what we're selling.
This is actually, so just to preview a little bit of our
Jupiter Ascending.
Yes.
I think actually Brandon Sanderson does this a lot. Like his stories are great.
Yeah.
His world building is like he takes chapters out. He calls them interludes in the Stormlight Archive.
Yeah.
Just to do world building, unrelated. New characters, like they're just short stories just for world building.
Yeah.
Like Brandon Sanderson is a master world builder, and he sometimes has trouble leaving that alone long enough to actually tell a story.
This is actually a good point too, because we specifically are modeling. We're taking inspiration from Avatar in the sense that we are world building from the audience's perspective by just visiting new places.
Yeah.
Like the idea is every episode we go to a new place and we watch these same characters that we're getting to know interact with a new part of the world. So by the end of the season, you have this whole complete view.
I'm so excited for that. I love stories that do that. I think Avatar is great. I'm sure there are other things that do that.
It's the DM in me that loves the world building.
Yeah.
I mean, I think a lot of people, like, in our fan base love world building as well. I think that it's like now that people are aware of what it is. I mean, I did it all the time as a kid when I would, like, make things up with my friends, I guess.
It's a very intuitive place to start. Storytelling is harder than world building.
Yeah, no, definitely. Storytelling is very...
Good storytelling
is harder than
world building.
Right. I think it depends on I think it's world building is much more logical. Storytelling is very emotional and intuitive, and it's not... It's hard to learn.
It's hard to make. I don't want to make hard and fast decisions, but
it depends on your personality, I'm sure.
There's more art to storytelling than there is world building. I think there's more technique.
I would say that like world building is more of the science side of it, and the story is more of the art side of it. To vastly oversimplify.
Right, or it's just like there's more. It's easy to let your imagination go wild with world building, and because At that point,
right, yeah.
you very rarely ever have to reject something out of world building. If you want something in your world, you go, I bet you I can find a place for that.
Yeah.
Storytelling, you have to make hard decisions like, we can't do this all the time.
No, storytelling is actually a lot of exclusion.
Yeah, storytelling is protagonist not spend a long time with the sexy ninjas wearing bandages, like a third of the book. Like, sorry,
Patrick Rothfuss.
This is
Wise Man's Fear.
Oh. Yeah,
Patrick Rothfuss is actually my favorite fantasy writer. But he needs some help with editing.
Yeah, he's clearly like he's an amazing world builder, and his world is amazing, but he kind of spent forever in one place that he made.
There's a lot more discretion involved in storytelling than world building.
Quick couple of like technical questions. We have, can you Skyvault through transparent solids? No. If it has to do with density, then
the gauntlets are smarter than that.
Yeah. And what's the thinnest opening you can vault through? I don't know, actually.
What kind of question is that?
I think the precision of trying to aim for one is basically impossible, is the main problem.
Well, I think probably anything the gauntlet goes through, but I wouldn't suggest testing that because rest of you will probably get caught.
You're trying to hit a planet. So actually, this is one thing we kind of brush over. We do always, in our script so far, tend to end up roughly in the area of the spot on the planet we want to go. And I don't know if we'll ever really address exactly how that works.
No, that's really a convenience thing.
Yeah, that one is definitely artistic.
What do they do in A Wrinkle in Time? Are they like, please imagine the place you want to go? Meg, imagine it really hard. I don't remember what they do in that.
It's probably that these planets are very small and maybe have really fast days.
I think it doesn't matter. It's like that's when it gets down to the detail level that it doesn't really matter anymore because the story. That's actually exactly what I was talking about. When it gets down to that dispute, we do it the other way because it makes the story work better.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Can someone use gravity to interfere with the Skyvault as a trap? No, because nobody can interfere with gravity.
If they could, then probably.
It's true. Like if God decides, hey.
Well, so that's as an addition to the cultural thing. There is the technology is supposedly from an ancient civilization that is also loosely based on like Mayan aesthetic.
It's really Mayan aesthetic and almost nothing else.
So presumably at the time of whoever made that stuff, they maybe somebody could have done that. It's like the
that's true.
In our story, it is almost like civilization collapsed and we are picking up the pieces of it. So no one has that ability.
What happens if you want to go to a planet on the opposite side of your current planet? Do you go through the planet beneath you? No, you have to wait.
You have to no, you have to wait until the thing comes back around.
Yeah, the fact is here in the trailer we have equations for the in-body problem. Actually, that's where I got the equations. Because so the idea is that we have 5 solar systems. Technically, there are 5 stars. So here, just for a little bit more world building, there's 5 stars. We roughly base them on 5 different regions of Texas. We have North Texas, East Texas, West Texas, Coastal Texas, and Central Texas.
Yeah.
So the star for the central system is the only one that can always be seen from any particular solar system. No matter where you are, that one's always visible. So that's the Lone Star.
Right.
We call it the Lone Star Cluster for that reason. The idea is that these 5 systems all orbit around each other in a way that is not really predictable necessarily.
Yeah.
Like it's not set. Just like I did some reading on the in-body problem for this, which is the idea like how do you predict how 3 bodies will work in orbit around each other? And the answer is with great difficulty.
Yeah.
And to certain points, there are certain problems that you can provide a certain solution for, but not a repeating solution for. So we can tell how these things will orbit for a time, but then we can't say that it's a chaotic system.
Yeah.
And so the way this system works is that the 5 orbit around each other chaotically, but so far haven't fallen apart. So theoretically, they could repeat. And they are repeating, but it's not it's difficult to manage. So a lot of the questions are, how do we know how this works? It's complicated. Most of the answers are, it's complicated.
Ewander's asking if there's a cooldown on the gauntlets. No, actually, but I think there's enough limitations otherwise that it makes it kind of difficult to the cooldown is you have to wait until you're in position for the next one.
Yeah, basically.
Eric Training asks, can I ask you to add one more equation in future Blackboard? You can, absolutely. It's probably the one I specifically didn't add because I didn't have space on the paper. But go for it. I'm back. What did I miss? Everything important. Also, just out of curiosity, do you have any air conditioning?
That's a good question.
Yeah, what happened to it?
I don't know. We got one interesting. Someone's asking, are the solar systems really close? Here, keep answering a couple questions.
Sure.
I'll turn the air conditioning on.
The solar systems are pretty close. in terms of solar systems, they're closer than any real system. Like we're basically treating each solar system as a body, and those 5 bodies are orbiting each other in sort of slightly unpredictable ways. So they're close enough. They're closer than any real solar systems. And in real life, you wouldn't actually get 5 stars this close. It's not like they're a binary system. They're not that close, but they're...
We have some of those, too.
Right.
Not stars, planets, weirdly.
Right, like Dallas-Fort Worth is a binary planet system.
Right. So Airterranean asked, I thought, an interesting question, but it is just, might get like, I have a long answer, which was, let me double check back. It was a little bit while ago. He asked, how do you stop yourselves world building too much at the extent of writing and redrafting a story?
That's a good question. What I do is I do them interchangeably. What I'll do is I'll set up enough world to inspire story, and then I'll start doing story until I need more world. Then I'll solve that problem with more world, and then go back to storytelling.
What if you've come across a world that contradicts the previous story?
We redo it all.
So I've personally spent a lot of time specifically studying storytelling independently of world building, I think.
Me too, actually.
I've read books on it.
Both.
I've listened to a lot of
I've done
podcasts and other writers talk about their processes.
I've actually done storytelling very informally. I just everything I know about storytelling, I get from you, so I get some of it processed through you.
Yeah.
But everything else, there's never anything I consume media-wise that I don't learn from.
I think the easy answer, like if there's going to be like the easiest way to answer the question, is you focus on the people instead of the world.
That's a good answer.
Because the thing that drives the main thing that drives a good story forward is people making decisions.
Right.
That is actually that should be the fulcrum of your entire story. Just like with any kind of writing or artistic, know the rules so you can break them. There are obviously exceptions to this rule that you can find if you know what you're doing.
I think this is one of the things that is most stark about science fiction is it doesn't always do that.
That is true. Science fiction does focus on concept over character.
Science fiction is sometimes macro.
Yeah. But I do think if you were trying to write something similar to what we were writing, and you want to make sure you focus on the story over the world, that paying attention more to the characters, their decision making, their motivations, their goals, the things that they need to achieve, and the themes that surround all of that and tie it together.
Themes actually are a really important part.
Me and Ian are very into thematic resonance. And
it's because this is actually one reason is what I do is when I look at themes, I look at what needs to be developed for that theme first.
Yeah.
And if it contradicts the theme, I better have a good reason.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Themes are like it's actually it's one of those things I wish I knew more about in high school. You're like, what's the theme of this? And that's an impossible question to answer.
No, it's not. Okay.
It's really hard.
It's really not.
I think theme is much more difficult to look at from the outside on an existing work than it is from the inside when you're trying to build a work up. Because theme is always in my head when I'm writing.
Well, you can always you can find a work's theme by searching for just simple repetition.
Sure, I would agree. It's similar to the analysis this is what English classes do, right?
Yeah.
Like sometimes they're not correct, but they are at times. Obviously there are some things where Animal Farm had some pretty heavy themes to it.
Satire.
Okay, Animal Farm, Animal Farm.
Animals are better when they can't talk.
Animal Farm's themes are extremely obvious. When you're trying to find the themes of something that's harder and you're not sure how to do it, you can just look for repeated phrases or images or anything like that, and it'll point you to larger
believe
themes.
A well-written work should have its theme prominent.
I think I have a good answer to this, actually, which is...
Animal Farm.
Every story has a message to it, whether
It's a genre.
I think every story has a message whether you put it in there or not.
Yeah, absolutely. That's kind of
and
definitely
you can
out there.
extract a theme from a movie whether or not the person put it in there. And your job as a writer is to steer that. Your options aren't to add one or to not. It's to steer the direction that it goes in.
Right. People are going to read out of your work what they want.
Right.
If you want to communicate clearly.
Yeah. You're gonna put themes in your work no matter what
you will do it by
because
accident.
you have your own themes that dictate your life.
Right, yeah, you have your own opinions on things that will come through your work, and if you're not consciously paying attention to it, it will happen anyway.
It's interestingly, that's why historical epic is really kind of annoying to read.
Yeah.
Broad historical work, because either they're unrealistically thematic, or they're themeless and boring because real life is themeless.
Yeah.
It's not themeless.
Real life
isn't themeless because big groups of people buy into themes.
There's not one omniscient person directing the theme.
From an objective perspective, it's kind of
okay, never mind.
I think that there is actually,
when you read about the Battle of Hastings, you can't say, the theme was teamwork is important.
No. When you read about the Battle of Hastings, you say like it was these things that caused it to happen. And those are the themes.
I can understand that you are trying to argue against me, but you can see from my perspective where I say that there's a difference between narrative fiction and real life in terms of the presence of themes.
You can definitely read things that can be classified as themes into real life events simply because of ideological movements.
But however, through people,
they come through people, right? Who look for themes in their own lives.
This is why I find reading history a bit difficult sometimes.
Because you're
there is no universal theme as a theme upon itself. Sure.
I believe in meta-narratives. Stop disenchanting me.
Disenchantment.
I'm so triggered right now. Okay.
So this actually isn't a bad question. Dumb Name says, I don't want to be that guy, but what happens if the Kickstarter is not successful?
We try again later.
Honestly, yeah. In that case, like you can. I think hopefully we've made it obvious that we've put a lot of thought into this story and are very invested in it.
Okay.
We don't want to. We're not just going to scrap the story. What we will do if the Kickstarter doesn't go through is we'll continue working on it, and in another year or two we will try again. I don't know if it'll be crowdfunding. I don't know if it'll be trying to pitch it to a studio. It'll depend on what the landscape is like for us at the time. But we'll just save it and we'll try again later.
I mean, we obviously think this is really important. Like, this is really worth something.
We're not
going to give up for sure.
If it like as far as so that like channel will keep running at least on the schedule that it currently is. That won't change at all. Nobody will be charged because that's how Kickstarter works.
I want to say like just whether or not this fires, I am super humbled and super happy that this many people have given just as much money as they have.
Yeah, no, the amount that we've raised is amazing.
Yeah,
like, you guys have gone like just so out of your way to donate to this project. Like I keep noticing like the other day I was like, we had a slow day this day, and I realized that the slow day was earning the entire budget of the guards themselves in one day.
Right.
Yeah. It's incredible. So thank you all so much for caring about what we have to say at all, for that matter.
Yeah.
Or watching us play Mass Effect stupidly, or it makes me personally so happy that anything I do is entertaining to anybody else.
Yeah.
Minimum. If it's meaningful to somebody, that's stupid incredible, but just entertaining is great. So
what we'll probably do, we'll probably go back to basically doing the same thing for a couple of months, and then we do have other projects we can work on. Essentially, the priority will be, if we don't make the Kickstarter this time, then the priority will become make sure we can do it next time.
Yeah.
Which will be improving and I think making some other things in between that will kind of be add to our portfolio.
We definitely want to flex some.
Yeah. We do have other ideas that aren't as big as Skyvault that we would be able to do in the intervening time. So there's. It won't be the worst. It will be disappointing for sure. We would really like to be able to make it this year. But if it doesn't work out, we don't.
It won't ruin us by any chance.
It doesn't ruin us in any way.
We have not overextended.
I'll need some recovery time personally, but
well, that's probably gonna need.
We've been working so hard this month, especially Kyle and Allison have been on every day, all the time, and they are exhausted, more exhausted than usual. Poor guys. Yeah. I mean, Ian and I've also been working super hard.
Right, actually,
all the time, but less than them, I guess.
You know what? The worst thing about today is. It's the last day of spring break.
Oh yeah.
I have to go to work tomorrow.
Yeah, me too.
I need lesson plans. If you're a student watching, I definitely know what we're doing tomorrow. Don't listen.
So do I.
It's okay. The stream maybe cut out right when you said that. So.
Oh, good. Anyways,
we had and then we had one other question from Salfer asking how will the channel be affected if the Kickstarter gets funded.
For the most part, everything changes.
Does it?
I mean,
not really. For the most part, the channel actually won't change visibly from the outside.
Well, it shouldn't.
Either direction, whether it gets funded or not. We have the next year of videos planned out. We'll continue on the every other week schedule, and we'll have enough videos built up that it will continue running even while we're shooting the footage.
Well, we haven't shot those yet, though.
We haven't, but we have enough time to do it. So
yeah,
we will. You shouldn't actually notice a major change.
No,
in
I should say externally the channel won't change at all. Internally, everything goes shifts into hyper sport mode.
We'll be getting much busier, and after the whole thing is done, it might change, and that we're gonna hopefully get an office and upgrade to full production studio and everything. But for the next year, I'm pretty sure it'll be
externally should be nothing.
Yeah.
The what? What? Ian, what'd you say?
Externally should be nothing.
Nothing will change.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
If we don't get the Kickstarter funding.
there really won't be a noticeable change. Yeah. whether it gets funded or not, especially for the next few months, it probably won't be a big difference. And with that, I think we're going to go ahead and call a break. We've been doing this for a while.